Ryan, my association with Milt goes back to like '79. I remember being in a lesson with Richard, and I asked him a question about a piece of music or something. He says, "Just a minute." And Richard would be famous for this. He'd go over to the phone and dial. He says, "Hey, Milt, I got a student here who needs to ask you a question." And he hands the phone to me. He would do that with so many players, so that's the first time I met Milt.
What's up, folks? Welcome to episode 129 of the Bass Shed podcast. My name is Ryan Roberts. All right, what's up, folks? What's up, folks? For new listeners, if you've not checked out the Bass Shed podcast before, welcome. Please make sure to hit the subscribe button. Get notified about new episodes that are coming out every week. All right, folks, I got some things coming up for you. On October 26th, there will be a Latin masterclass with Mr. Oscar Cartaya. If you have not checked out Oscar before, I highly recommend checking him out. You can listen to Oscar himself on episode 84 of the Bass Shed podcast. That's when I had him on as a guest. Oscar and I, we've known each other for a little while. Actually, one of the first outings I went to in Los Angeles here to go hear some live music and meet musicians, Oscar was playing bass on. So I've been hip to Oscar for a while. Always enjoy his playing. And he's doing a Latin masterclass at October 26th, like I mentioned, at Collage, a place for art and culture in San Pedro, from 2 to 4. That will be a live streamed event. So if you are not in the Southern California area, you will still be able to catch the Latin masterclass with Oscar Cartaya on October 26th. Stop by the bassistacademy.org to check that out. Proceeds from the masterclass workshop with Oscar Cartaya will go to support Global Arts. That is a nonprofit organization whose sole mission is helping to support youth through music. That's a foundation and an organization that Oscar is very passionate about and supports, and I wanted to help support that with him. So the proceeds will go to that. So by joining the masterclass workshop, by checking it out online or attending in person, you will also be helping support youth music programs. There's information about the masterclass with Oscar at the bassistacademy.org, and also information about the Global Arts Corporation, and you can read more about their story and their history. Other events coming up with the Bass Shed Academy. Barry Green, many of you may know as the co-author of The Inner Game of Music. We'll be doing, him and I are putting together 2 events in November in Southern California. Those will also be live streamed. We have November 21st, which he will be doing a masterclass lecture clinic. I never know which verbiage to use sometimes. But he'll be doing one of those at the Los Angeles College of Music, and that will also be live streamed. And then again, he'll have a completely different program on November 23rd at Collage, place for art and culture, that will be live streamed. Again, if you're interested in checking any of that out, stop by thebassistacademy.org.
This is Jerry Jamont. Welcome to my book of transcriptions, Volume 1 of 15 bass lines recorded during the golden era of music, beautifully transcribed by Ryan Roberts of the Bass Shed Academy. Transcriptions elevate your playing by taking you places where you normally wouldn't go. "15 songs, each one accompanied by my recollection of the era and what was going on during the session, the creative process, the little things I use that I kind of highlight in my book, The Bass in You, basically the techniques that we use as bass players, the videos that accompany each song in the bass lines, also available on my 1 Minute Bass platform. So look forward to seeing you, and thank you for entertaining this thought."
lemurmusic.com. Everything you need for the double bass can be found at lemurmusic.com. Stop by their website, check out their inventory of bass accessories, sheet music, bows, rosins, bass. If you're in the Southern California area, schedule an appointment, stop in, lemurmusic.com. Everything you need for the double bass. Use the promo code TheBassShed, all one word, and save 10%. On the episode is Peter Dominguez. Peter Dominguez grew up in Milwaukee and began performing with the music of youth orchestras. He served as the professor of double bass and jazz studies at Michigan State University from 1984 to 1996 and continued studies with Robert Gladstone while substituting with the Detroit Symphony. Peter was the professor of jazz studies and double bass from 1990 to 2020 at the Oberlin Conservatory of Music. He is currently the professor of double bass and jazz studies at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He continues to perform with an impressive array of classical, jazz, and Latin artists throughout the Americas and Europe. His teaching includes national and international classes, adjudication of international competitions, artistic direction of the Richard Davis Foundation for Young Bassists annual conference in Madison, Wisconsin, and the director of the Milt Hinton Institute for Studio Bass. Peter's recordings include How About This, that was released in 2010, Groove Dreams, that was released in 2017, that was performed on Milt Hinton's famous 1790 bass, and another solo bass recording entitled Bass Salute that was released in 2023 featuring Richard Davis's 1855 Lionhead double bass. It was an honor to have Peter on the podcast, and you might remember hearing about the Milt Hinton Institute for Studio Bass from episode 116 of the Bass Shed podcast with artistic director of NJ Pack, David Rodriguez, right? There's a lot of bass energy. There's a lot of bass energy over there that goes on to putting this thing on. I love it. I absolutely love it. Again, it was a fantastic time talking with Peter, and here it is. Here's my talk with double bassist and educator Peter Dominguez. How you doing, man?
Not bad. Nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Thanks for all the stuff you've been doing for decades.
Oh. Not decades.
Not yet.
Thanks for all the stuff you know. Not yet. It seems like decades.
That's the old soul you got in you.
Yeah, I guess that's what it is. Maybe I can blame the heartburn on that. You're in Milwaukee, correct?
I'm actually I have a house in Avon Lake, Ohio, outside of Cleveland,
Okay.
where I taught at Oberlin for 30 years.
Yeah.
But then, I'm from Milwaukee, but we have a crib in Madison,
Nice.
where I now teach, where I made the jump.
Right.
But Wisconsin came after me, after Richard left, and the bass department kind of went, it had problems, so they came after me and brought me back to my alma mater. Where I studied with Richard. I studied with Richard from 77, and I was his assistant from 80 to 82, and did my master's with Richard Davis in Madison.
Yeah. Man, I'm pretty tight with Jerry Jamont, who I know was teaching electric bass over at that camp, and
My brother.
me and Jerry kind of met in person for the first time. It was days after Richard had passed, and that was kind of
It was tough.
yeah, that was kind of a somber mood.
We knew he was going. I mean, I saw him a week before, and I probably talked to Jerry that next day, and it still shook us. It's still shaking me now. I mean, it's just like, he had given so much besides his playing to both Jerry. I mean, we were like sons. I mean, I love Jerry's book. Jerry's book is just, I mean, he's just, he's such a true, honest character.
Yeah, there's nothing. He's not hiding behind anything in that book.
No.
Which is fantastic. Him and I are actually working on a transcription book right now. That's one of the projects we're working on. We got a couple going. But that's one. And like after he came by the studio and brought a bunch of tracks. And he's like, cool, man, we picked 15. He's like, well, that's going to be volume 1. I'm like, volume 1, Jerry, come on, man. I got some other things going on in my life.
He's got that much. He's got that much.
He's got that much. And then volume 2, we decided, is going to be everything he played on Live at the Fillmore with Aretha.
Mm-hmm.
Then we were watching the footage over at his house one day. I'm like, man, we got to make a documentary about this. So that's the other project. His volume 2 is going to be, it's turned into a documentary project now.
Man, I know it's a labor of love. I just finished the Richards documentary. It's called
Hmm.
String Theory, the Richard Davis Method. Right now, it's
Oh
just
man, I'm gonna need to pick your brain about this then because I'm
yeah,
just
it's premiered.
getting
It
into it.
took 5 years, you know.
Okay.
But Jerry knows about this, and it's just making the rounds of documentaries right now in Wisconsin, and we're going to show it at the Jazz Festival. So it's been shown in Milwaukee 3 times. It's been shown 4 times already. So it has to first go through all this, to be part of this documentary series and be competitive with the documentary. It goes through this for about a year,
Okay.
showing docs, and then it'll be I'll put it out there, probably go on NPR, and then it'll be with the Richard Davis Foundation website. We'll have it out there.
That's
But
great,
it's an
man.
hour long documentary.
Okay. I connected with the Richard Davis Foundation after he passed, and I have a nonprofit called the Bassist Academy, and I wanted to connect and support what they're doing there.
Thank you, Ryan. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was great. I mean, that's what I've taken over Richard's position there, but I helped. I
Cool.
was the conference coordinator. I helped him start it 30 years ago.
Okay.
When I was teaching at Michigan State, and now Catherine Harris is our executive director, and so she's probably received your correspondence. I haven't
I
caught up.
believe that's who I talked to. It was right after. It was right after all that.
It was hard. It was hard. What was so hard about it, Ryan, is so many people attached onto his legacy. The 45 years of playing and recording in New York City. So they really didn't know the man the next 45 years of his life, and they were claiming provenance over who he was, and just explaining him. And I have to say that the couple 2 weeks, I won't talk to any media. I got really upset with it.
Yeah.
I just kind of backed off and just waited for official statements to come out. Well, RDYB has an official statement that we all worked on, and Richard really being I mean, he wasn't practicing Buddhist, but that he's pretty much a Buddhist, and
Mm-hmm.
he didn't want anybody monologuing about him.
Hmm.
He didn't want any type of memorial. He said, if you want to honor me, play some music for me.
That's when Jerry called me, and I think Jerry had initially texted me one night when it went down, and I'm like, man, we just got to do a hang. Let's just do a Richard Vinyl hang and just celebrate him through the music and what he left us, because he's still here with us there. So that's still one of the things Jerry and I are looking forward to
You got it, Ryan.
put together, just doing the vinyl hang, and that's gonna be that'll be nice. That'll be nice.
It's amazing. You can keep going too. I mean, before I left Madison, I watched about 100 records, and probably 30. 30 of them Richard's playing bass on them. I'm just going,
Yeah.
okay, it's stacked up. Okay, got to hear this, got to hear that. Studio session, just studio session. Where he's
Right.
on so much. So. Well,
Cool, man.
do give my love to my brother.
I will.
JJ,
He was I think he might be coming over tomorrow, but him and I talk absolutely very regularly. So I will
Yeah, he's been to
100%.
he was at the first. I mean, this is the t-shirt from the first Milt Hinton. His
Mhm.
name is on there. It is 10 years ago. I went to
Okay.
Milt Hinton, and that's Milt's signature bass.
Yeah.
But Jerry was the first. He came to that first one, at Oberlin.
Okay.
So
When did it move to Jersey?
well, it just now.
Oh, okay.
This is the first time. This is the
Okay.
first time. But we started, Ryan, when the collection came to Oberlin, and I started working on it in 2013, and then had the inaugural one in 2014. I always said to the benefactors, I said, because we have to fly so many East Coasters in for this. Be nice to have a East Coast conference, right?
Mhm.
And sure enough, it kind of evolved there, and we got involved with NJPAC, New Jersey Art Center, with John Schreiber, and it kind of developed. But then when we toured some places, and Montclair State just seemed like the perfect place for it.
Cool.
It's a little bit disconcerting because I'm not on site there, and we have a different entity hooked up with NJPAC and MSU. but we're working out the bugs, and we have. I'm telling everybody I work with there. The mantra is, WWMD. Remember that. I tell the kids that. What would Milt Hinton do? And it pretty much guides us out of any kind of consternation that happens, or any questions of, okay, make decisions here or there. But Milt is, so Ryan, my association with Milt goes back to like 79. I remember being in a lesson with Richard, and I asked him a question about a piece of music or something. He says, just a minute. And Richard would be famous for this. He'd go over to the phone and dial. He says, "Hey, Milt, I got a student here who needs to ask you a question." And he hands the phone. He would do that with so many players, so that's the first time I met Milt. Not realizing now later on, Milt coming back in my life with his collection, and I'd been to his house in his basement, and I featured him at Michigan State, but he was Richard's mentor in a lot of ways. That helped facilitate Richard going to the University of Wisconsin and becoming a professor there.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the things I didn't realize later that what Richard was sharing with me were really like a standard of decorum and dignity, giving to people that he when he left Chicago and he went to New York City, he pretty much got that. He was really taken under the wing of Milt Hinton, and Milt would take him to a lot of studio sessions and have him play for contractors and all that. So Milt helped him establish.
No, he really got him involved. That's
pretty much. He was the next heir apparent in the studio that could read anything and play anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't realize that, but then there was such a connection. And so when we started the Richard Davis Foundation for Young Bassists, Milt was the original. He was on the board of directors, and he was scheduled to come, but he had walked on by that time. These are really linked together. These two entities, the Richard Davis Foundation for Young Bassists. We've done 30 conferences. They happen on a Friday and Saturday on Easter weekend. Okay. We've done 30 of these, and that's like the micro version.
Now, if I can hit pause for a second, I bring this up because specifically this year Easter fell on a weird weekend.
Sure did.
Like this one, it was like the last one of March or something. Like I think it's typically the second one of April, of on, and then this year was. And I was talking to some people like, why do they just move in the date like this? Like what? They're just hopping it around. So did you follow how it would fall in the month of April, or it still stayed with Easter even when Easter moved?
We would stay with Easter. This started at Easter because Richard, even when he came to Madison, he was flying out all the time. He was flying, to Japan or flying East Coast, West Coast, for studio sessions. And he looked at his book, and the only weekend that he had free was Easter weekend.
I love that tradition carried on. I love that tradition.
Yeah. So we might have to move it next year just because of space and just a lot of things have changed. High schools and grade schools don't get off for Easter anymore. They don't take the Good Friday off anymore. So
really,
we're kicking around with our board of how to change that a little bit. But anyway, I mean, it sometimes it's a foot of snow on the ground during Easter. Sometimes it's 50, 60 degrees out. You just never know. I mean, where it places it. But anyway, going back to that, Richard was so the Milt Hinton Institute for Studio Bass is the macrocosm of the curriculum that we use, and it was developed from the Richard Davis Foundation for Young Bassists. But MHI, the added component there was Ryan, and this because you don't like to get pigeonholed into playing this style or playing that style.
Sure.
Because you have a bass player, and so that's where we created the title for studio bass to dispel the idea that this is for classical bass players, this is for jazz players, this is for pop players, this is for electric players. No, it's for bass players. And the caveat is, and I learned this from Richard. I asked Richard because I wanted to mirror image. I was a mirror image of Richard. I wanted to be him. I wanted to be in the studio because I played so much. Grew up playing jazz by ear, learned thousands of songs from my father, but then played in orchestras,
Mhm.
you know. So it was sort of like, how do we dispel this idea of being specific to the style, the camp is specific to a style. And that's where I really came up with the studio-based concept, because Richard advised me, okay, how do you get involved in the studio? He said, start with folk music,
Mm.
recording folk music. And sure enough, when I became a professor at Michigan State, I probably did 6 folk recordings that year with Joel Mabus and Kitty Donahoe and Jim Post, and it was hard as shit. Didn't matter. It wasn't the style of music. It just to be in the studio to play with verve and intonation and groove and all that. Didn't matter the style. I realized that, wow, okay. And then I started doing some commercials for Buick, you know, and the string section was the Detroit Symphony and that kind of stuff. And just realizing, damn, this, you know, the stakes are, because all the playback is all you, baby.
Right. So were those Buick commercials the first time you were doing sessions as section work? Everything else was you were the primary bass player?
No, I was the primary bass player in all this too.
Okay.
With the, you know, and with the click track and everything, you know.
Okay.
It was, so, but that was, you know, influence from Richard. I mean, influence, you know, got into that. So going back to the title for studio bass, so we really put these, the added bonus of this Milt Hinton Institute is we have small bass ensembles we put together.
Yeah.
And then we bring them into the studio, and the teacher, the director, or the whoever has that ensemble, whatever style they play, they become producer, and I'm executive producer, and then we put them into real life engineering, and then we do playback, and we put them in the cans, and Milt always said this: you get a true sense of a musician's soul by watching their eyes in the playback. You know, that's where the truth, you know, and that's where he got so many great, you know, inside pictures of the great artists that he recorded with, you
Sure.
know, and playback. And so we go through what Milt's words were, and, you know, and I have to tell you, the next, you know, then we do the bass orchestra on Friday. Thursday is small groups, bass orchestras on Friday. Then we put them on the stage on Saturday. And you know how it is after you do recording and then you go play live.
Right.
It's freedom, you know.
Yeah.
It's like
You got all this pent up, you're just ready to bust loose.
it's a beautiful thing, and the kids know it, and it's kind of a spiritual thing happening, and the faculty knows it, and we just go, whoa, and they always come back, well, we wish we would have recorded that. No, you don't get chance.
That's actually a big lesson for all the attendees too, is the difference between stage and studio.
Mm-hmm.
And the freedom and kind of what you can quote unquote get away with live, and the energy and how you can push it in a way live that you don't always have the same liberty in a session.
Yeah, and then you have to deal with not having that energy from the room and from the people in the studio. So you have to come with feel and conviction and cause sensation in the studio, which is really it's a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's something to work out. How do you talk about? I mean, I'm sure you do at the camp, of really the amount of emotional commitment you have to bring at the studio, because there's nothing really, there's nothing around you to help get those
That's
feels.
a great question, because we you know, this year it's pretty special being in Montclair. We're right next to Rudy Van Gelder's studio.
Yeah.
We're you know, this is a special surprise. I'm letting the cat out of the bag. We're gonna We're gonna go spend that Wednesday morning in the Van Gelder studio.
Oh man.
And we got.
Is it? What's the condition of?
Huh?
Can you record there, or is it still open for
tours?
tours?
Still recording. So it's still been, you know, Don Sickler runs it. He's a great arranger, trumpet player. But okay, we got Ron coming in to talk for an hour.
Ron at Rudy's?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, man! I'm flying out. I'm flying out.
Talk about the very thing that you asked
Man.
I'm letting that cat out. Nobody knows about this. Then after that, Renan Meyer is going to talk about the bow in the studio.
Mhm.
And then Ben Williams is going to follow with
Okay. Yeah.
we got stacked up in the morning. So we take them into the studio. Don Sickler talks about not only the legacy of Rudy's studio there, and but talks about protocol.
Yeah.
You don't move a mic. You don't move this. You don't. There's just certain things that people got to know about. To be in a
Sure.
real. So some of that with maybe some of that's passe, but we're just trying to keep it all in that tradition of Milt Hinton, George DeVivier, Richard Davis, and now Ron Carter as the most recorded people in the history of recording.
Yeah, man. And those are the guys that Jerry talks about. He talks about all those guys, and I'm very happy that DeVivier's name is always recognized, because I really think that DeVivier is one of the cats that's easily glossed over way too commonly. Yeah, so I like that everybody makes a point, just always make sure he's recognized in that. But then Jerry will, it's like all those guys, Ron, DeVivier, Richard, and then Chuck Rainey, like Chuck Rainey. It's a couple other cats like that, and then like that was the squad in New York. Those were the guys.
It really was. Richard always said that Chuck and Ray Brown were West Coasting while him and Jerry were East Coasted.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
It's pretty much it. Yeah, we had Chuck out at Richard Davis Foundation.
Oh, great.
We got to hang and I didn't know he was from Warren, Ohio, so he's not far from where
okay.
My house is here, and
nice.
Avon Lake.
He's in Texas now, I heard.
Is he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't. I thought he was still out here in LA, but I think Jerry told me he's back in Texas.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of other. I mean, people, Buell Nylinger and David Izenzon and Jay Leonard, and there's this whole tradition of really incredible studio bass playing that happened. Oh, certainly Chuck Domenico. We're talking West Coasting. There's there's some great players there. Bob Magnuson. Oh,
Yeah, I was talking to Michael Valerio not that long ago.
Michael's a bad dude, boy.
And it was like the Bass Magazine asked me to do an interview with him, and so we went out to lunch, and it turned into like a 3 or 4 hour hang.
Yeah.
And then I've talked to him since. We've gone back to the restaurant just to hang. Yeah, him and I've been talking about doing a master class about studio bass playing and how it's applicable to every aspect of playing, and how the conduct in the studio should be the same conduct you bring to a gig, and the precision and in all ways, in how you conduct yourself and the things you talked about, how you bring that to the gig, and these are things that Ron has talked about over the years, and respecting the other people and yourself and all that stuff.
In Milt's date book, that a lot of his stuff came to Oberlin and got to look at it. He would do 3 record dates a day.
Yeah.
Right, man. I mean, I do one.
I know.
I'm done.
Right.
You do 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and then 7 o'clock,
Yeah.
Shit. How you do that?
I know. I think about that stuff. That's like how, how they would do it down at Muscle Shoals or the Wrecking Crew out here, where they're just pumping them out, and that's just the job, I guess, Yeah,
and that reflects back in Richard, just talking Richard, very often, I mean, we'd say, Richard, do you remember this recording? He had no recollection.
Yeah.
Put on, put on the stand, he played it, whatever happened to it, he didn't. In fact, there's a great story. This happens about 6 years ago. Bruce Springsteen was coming to the Reliance Center, the big stadium, indoor stadium they had in Madison. And he called up Richard and he said, "Hey, Richard, this is Bruce Springsteen." And Richard says, "Who?" And
As a joke, or was it
Richard, no,
legit?
Richard, you're on my first 2 albums, man. You played on my first. I did. Can you come out and play a couple numbers? And sure, I'll come out. But he was just like, wow, yeah, Richard, you're on spring.
Yeah.
But he was so. I mean, he was just so nonchalant about it. I mean, it was just the moment, but you hear that in his playing. He's so in the moment when he plays.
Recording technology being what it is, and the use of live players being what it is in the studio, and the lack of use of live players. How are you referencing that shift in the recording culture to the young kids?
Wow, that's a great question, Ryan. Yeah.
I mean,
don't think-
I think about this stuff a lot because I'm on staff over at Los Angeles College of Music, excuse me.
Yeah.
And they brought me into the recording thing to talk about, here's, for some like producer students that have maybe never seen an uprighter stuff, like we're gonna bring in the bass player. Here's how you mic it. Talk to him about blah blah. And I'm thinking to myself, but when these kids get out of school, the chance of them actually ever having to mic an acoustic bass is super rare. I love that the school, is still acknowledging it, but it's because of the state of technology and what's happened in the recording industry. How do you guys kind of address that?
I guess we really haven't addressed that.
Yeah.
In a
I
lot
mean,
of
there's
ways,
still work out there. I'm not saying that it's.
I mean, I say that as a professor. The young people coming in today are ahead of the curve of us.
Yeah.
A lot, and a lot of schools of music and conservatories that having somebody that deals in that, they're usually behind the industry. They're behind the curve. They're behind.
I think,
but that's a great question, and that's something that but we still have to find the way to have the integrity of the acoustic instrument represented
I agree. Yeah.
in actuality and sonically, and not. Please don't compress the bass sound. Please don't gate it.
Right. Yeah.
Please don't do that. Thank God for vinyl coming back, because they're really
I
interesting.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of that.
Yeah, I mean, I play vinyl just to get the full spectrum of the fundamental happening.
Right.
That's a great question. So this might be an initial seed to, it's really, I guess it's about the quality of sound then. If you can teach them the acoustic sound and what that is, and you can take that into the technological space and really know what that feeling of that sound is, I think that will serve you well in the long run as you venture into what's next in the recording studio.
We'll be back right after this.
All right, the middle of the show is brought to you by the International Society of Bassists, right? ISB, commonly referred to as ISB. Stop by isbworldoffice.com to learn more, all news about the double bass, players, sheet music, recordings, it's all there. isbworldoffice.com. All right, folks, the middle of the show, I'm opening up for you. I want you guys to get heard on the podcast, right? That's building community. It's an important thing to me. The middle of the show is for you. Stop by thebasshed.com, click on Get Featured, and let me know what you're up to, and I will plug what you're doing on the podcast. If you got a record coming out, if your band's going on tour, whatever you're doing. If you just dropped a new single, if you got something on Spotify, whatever news you want to release into the bass world, let me know and get featured on the Bass Shed podcast. Check out the show notes for more information. Check out the show notes for more information. Check out the show notes for more information.
Excellent, sir.
What have you found? Same question back to you.
I think that I remember when I got to LA in 2006, the first records that were on were hip hop records for this label called Top Dog Entertainment, which was the label that discovered Kendrick Lamar.
Oh, wow.
So I wasn't on Kendrick Records, but I was on the parent label Kendrick was originally on. And I remember that engineer was the engineer on Chronic and Doggy Style, and he had done some like West Coast hip hop records, like big ones. And he was talking back then in '06. He's like, man, it's coming back to what it was in the '90s. They're gonna start using live musicians again. Just watch.
Mhm.
Like he saw the curve happening. And then when that kind of thing started to happen more, like what Kendrick did, maybe 5 years ago, and D'Angelo has always kind of been doing,
I've been waiting to say that name.
all within that genre. He saw that trend happening, and while one aspect of it got really technological and really tech heavy and Pro Toolsy, the other one went the other way. So there was a divide, and I think that divide will always continue.
Yeah,
Where there will always be a fork in the road that chooses live instrumentation and musicians performing that, and then the other one builds it in the box. And it's not the single road anymore. That's what I think.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm a big advocate of going out and hearing this live. When you hear Chris Dave, and Robert Glasper, who's a badass bass player. What's his name?
Derek Hodge.
Derek Hodge. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness! And you get the lilt in the groove.
Yeah.
You basically get what D'Angelo and what the man created. With the logarithms,
Right.
who am I thinking of? The who programmed D'Angelo's record? I mean, I mean, he basically put the lilt into hip hop,
Yeah, Dilla. Dilla will go like the dude that goes all the way back, but Quest played on the D'Angelo.
Yeah, Quest is, but he come in, had this constant, and it's just the same thing as, I mean, you hear on Sidewinder that Billy Higgins is playing. He's playing the Cascara. He's swinging the Cascara while it's a boogaloo.
Mm-hmm.
So you have rhythmic non-alignment of 3-on-2,
right?
And it has to be felt. It's not, a machine can't subdivide it.
Yeah,
it's human,
right?
And once you get that feeling, and that's what Quest loved when he heard Dilla do it, program it, and he's, that's it. That's it.
yeah.
That's it.
Right.
That's really important. I mean, coming back to live, isn't that great? I mean, the quality of the sound will get it. I mean, how long can we just stand? I mean, what's taking over pop music is now all the bass drum is the bass now, and that's
right. It's all just like triggered stuff.
Yeah, it's just and then you got fake hi-hat going on, and it's just like okay, wait, go hear somebody do it human and live with a real instrument. I think that's gonna change your life.
Yeah, and I do. Well, we're talking about recording and the bass and recording. On there's some modern pop artists that I think are bringing back independent bass lines, like Charlie Puth has brought back some bass lines and has attention on the bass in his tunes. Dua Lipa, there's actually the sound of the bass on her track just sounds amazing. I love the tone of the bass on that track.
I love the Anderson .Paak.
Mm-hmm.
He hooks up with the bass drum and the drummer. I guess I go back. I mean, going back and went to Madison, and I got a good 8 years of playing with Clyde Stubblefield.
Ooh, let's talk about it. Okay.
Just what he would make. I mean, and this was kind of in his fusion period, but we played enough dance music with him with Pocket in every room. I mean, he could light up every room.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that combination of his snare and his bass drum, and understanding that that's where I really learned the bass is the drum is the bass. You have to hook up the foot. You can't get. I mean, he'd throw a stick at me if I got away from his foot.
Yeah.
Just okay. That's it. And then everything grows from that. I mean, everything kind of, once everybody agrees, the community happens in the pocket, in the pulse, and the bass drum and the bass player just has to be in sync totally. But what we learned from from his years in playing with the Godfather, James Brown.
Yeah.
So that really was important for me to understand that and understand. I'm always listening to that. It's interesting how bass drums have I mean, the EQing of the bass drum has gotten below the frequency of the bass, and that's when you run into some problems. You know.
That's also, I
Especially
think,
when
something
using
to
in jazz.
address uh in recording. And I know you've done records of your own, and you've obviously studio based. When you're producing a record, or it's a record of your own,
Mhm.
do you make that decision ahead of time? Because I know I've talked to producers and or engineers, even when it's not my session, and like, where's the bass gonna live? Does the
Yeah.
bass have the sub, or does the kick drum have the sub? Because that's
Yeah.
gonna change. That'll change some things about how we mic this.
Uh-huh.
If I'm on upright or
Yeah,
electric.
it's a little it's all kind of ties in. I have to say that I know a little bit of this from Milt,
Mm-hmm.
because Milt would always say, "No, Peter, you make sure that you stand in front of the bass drum so that the bass drum enhances your puff, but the diction of the note comes out first, and it's in front of."
Ooh.
There's some time, playing in the 30s with Cab Calloway with no
Yeah,
amp.
yeah, yeah.
How does the bass hurt? So he
Right.
said, you stand, sometimes in big bands, you see the bass player buried behind the drummer. Okay, that's a sonic challenge there, right there.
Mm-hmm.
So acoustically, you want to get that out in front. I'm also a big advocate with some of the studio cats, Jimmy Ryan and well, Billy Hart, is very sensitive to the tone, the tuning, first inversion major chord,
Mm-hmm.
first inversion of his bass drum and his snare drum and stuff like that. So sometimes if I'm producing, if something's in, something's in the key of G and your bass drum is tuned to the A flat, that ain't gonna work.
Right, right.
No, you got, there's
Uh,
and I hear I mean, you too, probably being a bass player, we hear, a lot of people don't understand that bass drums have pitch. They
Sure.
just think it's thud,
Right.
but it has pitch. So, I mean, I've had major conductors say, well, drums really don't have pitch. You just hit them, I'm going, huh? What?
Yeah.
I guess we hear, I'm a firm believer that 70% of the population really can't hear our notes. They can feel our
Sure.
notes,
Yeah.
you know. So that symbiotic relationship with the bass drum has to kind of change with the tune you're playing, the key of the tune you're playing, the location you're playing, how it's in, and when you're playing an acoustic bass, an upright, a double bass, your fundamental EQ has to be below the jazz bass drum.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the rock, that puts it underneath us.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the challenge. That's the challenge to EQ than the electric bass. So those are some insight to how to make a pyramid of your fundamental sound underneath with the bass drum and symbiotic with your fundamental down on the bottom, and then it supports everything up on top. Rather
Right.
than sometimes you hear these uprights that, well, hey man, I'm a product of the '80s. We had all those damn pickups that were all middly. I'm on a bunch of recordings, baby. I take, we thought it was a cat's meow, oh, we
Yeah,
can.
yeah. What were those what were those times like during that period when the pickups hit the scene and the session players, are they still just going with a mic in front of it, or are they starting to use are the engineers investigating? I mean, there's definitely records where you can hear a bass with a very pickup sound. And
Mhm.
then there's records from that period where it's like, yeah, that's still a mic in front of the bass.
Yeah.
What were you finding that was kind of a common practice during that era of recorded bass history?
It's interesting. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, I probably have gone through every kind of pickup there was between the DeArmond, which went right on the top, and then the Polytone and the Barkus Berry. And it's Ron really favored that Barkus Berry. Rufus had Bartoli's. Eddie loved that pickup sound. Eddie Gomez loved that
Yeah,
pickup
yeah.
sound. So then Niles Orsted Pedersen was able to. I mean, what enabled facility because they could lower the strings, you know, but the sound, we lost the puff. Sure, we got over diction, the diction of the note was there. Now all of a sudden we didn't, sometimes bass setup had more puff than diction, you know.
Right.
But now all of a sudden with the pickups, now we have all this diction, and we forgot about the puff and movement of air, and the pickup doesn't pick that up. So that's a great, man. You hit me with some great questions.
I
But
mean,
how I don't.
what's interesting is how you're describing the puff and the diction is because the puff and the bounce that has to, now we're talking about jazz and not hip hop. The bounce that has to happen with the note.
Yeah.
I hear so many students striving to play the right note on the right chord in the right way, and figuring out their intonation. Sound is secondary, and the bounce is the last thing on their radar when it comes to like all the things they should check in, on their little checklist of like, does my note have this? Like that bounce doesn't, and I think that comes from the puff. I think the puff and the bounce are very much very tight relationship.
Yeah,
Excuse me.
I agree with that. Right, I call it. You're trying to make wood bells,
Yeah.
and so they have to have some kind of reverberation.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're choked and they're not going to go anywhere. Like you see Sam Jones, how he releases the spring of the string, creates that bounce. Yeah, that's just from understanding the right resistance and really understanding the right. Well, Ron talks a lot about that being down at the end of the fingerboard, trying to find that. It's changed. I mean, it's really going back to pickups. It really has helped us refine our right hands in a lot of ways because it's cleaned up so much.
I feel like it's now I'm a product of just the pickup generation, but I also feel like it's probably bastardized the right hand technique a lot more.
Huh.
I mean, I feel like back in the day it was just producing a big sound. The band would play to where that sound could be heard, just from what I read. But it was the size of your note meant so much. And versus now, and this goes back to the puff diction topic, the size of the note isn't the same.
Mm-hmm.
So you can get away more with a perpendicular approach from guys going from electric to upright, and they can just like, wow, my technique doesn't have to change at all. I don't have to play this like a different instrument, and they can still go kind of perpendicular on it, which I don't think works on the acoustic. And so you have all this, everybody just kind of, it's the Wild West down there about how they're going to produce the sound.
Yeah, it's a different sound whether you come perpendicular or you come parallel with it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely different sound. And then Israel Lopez Cachao used 3 fingers, perpendicular.
Yeah.
Which, it's, I mean, somebody asked me, okay, what's right hand technique? It's all of the above.
Yeah, yeah.
Make the note sound. You can make it shorter. You can make it fatter. You can make it. You can make it.
What do
different harmonic series on it? You can do all kinds of things.
What do you personally teach?
What I personally teach?
Yeah.
All of the above.
Yeah, I mean, if they're new to the instrument, is there a starting point?
I just restrung the bass. I mean, I had a gut string bass set up, so with the strings up, I realized that you can get a lot of play in it, and talk about puff. Yeah, there is puff, but it's a great for developing left hand and right hand, because Suzuki Institute said it takes double bass players 18 months to have the strength in their hands to play pretty much the instrument.
And then you can lose it in 18 minutes.
Especially if you play a D flat or A flat,
Yeah. That could go out the window quick.
That's what Richard said, man. I got to play in every key.
Yeah.
Got to know the geography of every key. Otherwise, you're going to get caught.
Yeah.
No, this is great. I wanted to answer your question about what I would do in a concert setting when I'd go out on concert. I'd have the microphone set up. Now I got one of these ear trumpet labs,
I've been hearing about those. I've been hearing about those a lot.
That's for the house. I'd give that feed to the house. Then I have an amp, and I'm usually in the vicinity of the drummer, and it's amazing. I've let some great drummers. Okay, you EQ my bass amp.
Mm-hmm.
Holy cow! Oh, oh, just try that, right? You'll find
You let
out.
the drummer EQ the bass amp?
Yeah, because that's what I want them to, have the time hook up.
Sure.
And man, they get the shittiest sound of a bass amp. They have no clue. but
Excuse
they're
me.
listening to it like it's a cymbal sound ping, So then I have the stage monitor, and I usually don't rely on that. I'm usually relying on the bass for the sound coming off the instrument, having a
Mhm.
real instrument. And and so the amp is like a stage monitor for the rest of the cast.
Right.
So that's how I split it up, But I definitely use pickups. I mean, I use full circle now.
Okay.
Yeah, in the studio is a mix of all of the above. I mean, this latest I just released one in January of my Bass Salute album, another solo album.
Mm-hmm.
That we had 10 microphones with Andy Lavalle, 10 microphones in this beautiful hall. Some in the balcony, some because I was doing Boeing and all different stuff. And I learned something from Roberto Octopinti, who's up in Toronto, of putting a ribbon mic behind the back of the bass,
How high?
not on the ground. So it's face
Oh.
up. You get this darkness that you don't get in the front of the bass from that microphone.
Really?
Oh man.
Yeah, but that makes sense actually.
You get a really deep dark fundamental from that to mix, so I'm into just like, and you'll see on my solo albums, I'm trying to let the tune determine kind of the sound. And I mean, this latest one is with Richard's Linehead bass, and that
Mhm.
just has such tremendous versatility as a studio instrument,
Sure.
plays like a Ferrari, but then it can play in a bass section, and it just with the contra C, the bass just can open up. And so getting all these different microphones allowed me to, it took 2 years to figure out to mix down and stuff like that. Just, right? Are we ever
Excuse me.
satisfied? Are we ever satisfied? No.
No, of course not. How do you talk to studio-based students about setup? So specifically, I'm thinking mainly about strings because different sessions you'd walk into would require a different bass with different strings, and that's
Mhm.
applicable to both the double bass or electric.
Yeah.
If you're bringing in an active bass with round wounds or a P with flat, or if you got an arco session or a pitch session, those are going to be
Mhm.
different strings. How do you talk about that when, I mean, I'm sure most of these students only have one bass.
Right. Right.
So how do you talk about getting like kind of a diverse sound out of the one bass and one setup, and then how to maybe change that or
Yeah, I
have
guess
strings on standby or something?
it's more, I guess you try and qualify recordings and what kind of setup they're being used in that recording. If
Mm-hmm.
you're playing hot club stuff, you might consider a gut string bass on that. You
Sure.
know, different rosins affect the bowed sound. If you're putting something that's gritty and you need stickum, yeah, go for pops. But if you're playing something that's more of Bach and Baroque, go with some a more refined cello rosin. It doesn't have the stickum, and there's
Right.
just things that but you're always trying to. I guess you first come from imitation emulation, so you kind of go from a recording and how do I get into that, and then understanding, finding a luthier and a good bass teacher that can help you, flush that information out, as
Right.
you try to do. But I mean, it's funny on my 68 jazz bass, I'm still doing roto sounds on that, and it's a ebony
Nice.
board fretless, and
Nice.
yeah, they're tough on the chops,
Yeah.
but man, it the sound is just nothing like it,
Right.
trying to do that. But yeah, everything. Oh, that's Jocko. That's Jocko. Yeah, okay. That's okay. But I'm not Jocko. Nobody will be Jocko.
Even from the specific kind of dudes that are of that first era post Jocko,
Yeah,
nobody has his sound. They all like have his back pickup beat jazz sound,
yeah.
but nobody has that right hand. No one has the fire that he had. Nobody has that much heat in the right hand
No,
where Jocko's sound came from.
my goodness. Yeah. Well, Jerry's a witness of that, and
Yeah.
I'm okay. I followed him. I went and taught at University of Miami in '82. I went down there, and there was a Jocko sheet in the because he taught in the '70s at that studio at the Frost School of Music, and there was a sheet. There's a Jocko sheet in there. What do you take you through? And so
Okay.
I've and Don Kaufman had that, and it's pretty amazing. I mean, there's some folklore stories about him, having 10 bass students at University of Miami, and he pretty much told 9 of them to quit. That's the folklore that
That's
but
believable.
he was that kind of a person. I mean, he was really, he was
Sure.
just. But you're absolutely right, and really, I mean, part of it is, I mean, understanding and being a pedagogue that I am. I mean, I'm always, Scott LaFaro. Okay, how does he do this? How did he do this? How did he move around the instrument? Understanding that he developed his technique because he was a clarinet major in Ithaca College, and so he had a clarinet method book, and that's how he learned the bass through clarinet method.
I did not know that.
So it's sort of like setting him up. So he had a new way of playing it. You get Eddie Gomez with the root and fifth coming from the thumb, and then you have this. But then Jocko, you have the root coming from the fourth finger, and the bass moves this way.
Right.
So it's just like, man, new left hand technical stuff that I know. And that just blows me away when I can share that pick out what Jocko is doing and just show pedagogically what that works. That will free up more. But you're absolutely right. I mean, he came on the scene. Fortunately, I had a fretless. I was into Alfonso Johnson when he came on the scene, and I just went, whoa, whoa. So I was, I remember taking the albums and put him down to 16 and he's like transcribe all that shit.
Yeah.
It was great, but he's still. I mean, understanding harmonic series throughout every string, understanding all the different. He's just opened it up. I got to spend some time with Stefano Scodanibio.
Who's that?
Stefano Scodanibio. Stefano Scodanibio. He left us about 5 years ago. He's an Italian double bassist that would play a lot of contemporary music. He was like the Jocko innovator on upright. If you could somehow, I mean, he could play the bass like a harp with both hands fingering and plucking from the bottom up. Check him out.
Is there like a lot of artificial harmonics stuff he's doing?
He's into the series. He's into the series on each string.
Huh.
Stefano Scodan is Sconad Scodanibio. You got. I mean,
Yeah. Okay.
I heard him in the '90s. I heard him in the '90s, and and then I got to meet him, and we were in John Arise at an ISB convention, and I had to use Charlie Hayden's European bass in France, for something. And John O'Reilly was there, and right next to me was Stefano, and he's playing. And I just had to stop, and I just had to go, who is this MFer? Holy damn, blew me away. And then I brought him to Oberlin, did a concert. But he just was, I mean, he was playing Faney Hill. If you know the Barrio sequenzas? Have you ever heard of the Luciano Barrio sequenzas?
I've heard of them.
Yeah, so 14A is for cello.
Okay.
Stefano went to Barrio and asked that if he could do a bass version of that. 14B is for double bass, and that was written for Stefano.
Oh wow!
I mean, it's sort of like Xenakis. It's quarter tones. It's 25 years ahead of everybody. just like Jocko appeared, he was 25 years ahead of everybody.
Right.
Richard came on the scene. Richard was 25 years ahead of everybody.
Yeah.
We're just chasing these cats.
Who do you think personally has been kind of the last? I don't want to say the last, but who's still carrying that torch in your mind?
I think Edgar.
Mhm.
Edgar Meyer is.
Absolutely.
At Oberlin, early in his career, I'm drawing a blank on his name. I see his face. Who's the electric bass player who plays six string and just does, he sings and he does, he's pretty
Bona?
amazing. Huh?
Richard Bona?
Oh, well, he's another cat. I mean,
Yeah.
he's so captain. Christian McBride is another one. He doesn't miss
Mhm.
things.
I'm trying to think about a six-string player that sings.
Who's the Thundercat?
Oh yeah, okay.
Thundercat.
Yeah. I do think some of it is lost on me a little bit, and I think it's maybe because of my understanding of hip hop tradition or hip hop culture or kind of where he's coming from a little bit. I think some of it's lost on me.
I see.
Because I can't listen to it like I listen to just a trio. It's a different thing. I like it, but I do think some of it's it's a me thing. It's not Thundercat. It's a me thing.
Oh, and I understand it totally. I mean, I guess I've just said Emma Dayhuff. Did you know Emma Dayhuff when she was West Coasting?
I met her once at a jam session.
Yeah. She just finished her DMA.
Okay.
And she did her dissertation on the AACM in Chicago, and she's got a great quote of I think it comes from Roy Eldridge or Little Giant. It's much harder to be an originator than the best assimilator. I think Thundercat has that ingredient. Well, he's kind of he's kind of forging a new area where he's going to land. Who knows? I mean,
yeah.
Obviously, it's very interesting how he's got command of the instrument and musicianship. He's got musicianship, and so let's see where the creation goes.
Yeah, and I think it's ultimately good for the instrument that he's really something that's culturally that relevant, and the bass is at the front and center of it. I love that part of it, as a bass player.
Yeah, I mean, been a bass nerd from early on, playing all and playing in orchestras and teaching and playing upright but now playing solo bass and stuff like that. So I just for me, Ryan, I just want the instrument to disappear and I just feel this light coming off of the person when they play.
Yeah.
It's a purity kind of thing, it's almost the command of the music is absolute. Command of the instrument is there, and then something else happens.
Yo, this is Craig Gash. Subscribe to the podcast. Follow us on the Instagram, the YouTube. Leave us a comment.
All right. That was my talk with Peter Dominguez. Great hang. The Richard Davis Foundation is something that's been on my radar since, as I mentioned, talking with Jerry Jamont early on. That foundation is definitely on my radar, and I've reached out to them before. And I want the Bass Shed Academy to support what is happening over there with the Richard Davis Foundation, to pay into his legacy and what he established for young bass players. I think it's fantastic. I had a great time connecting with Peter about Richard Davis and everything else he's up to. Fantastic hang. It was a fantastic hang, and I look forward to having him back on the show. All right, that's about all I got for this one, folks. That's about all I got for this one. I'll catch you on the next one in a minute.